teachers, lecturers, students, and alumni. Our thanks also go to our students who help us with all the preparations. And we apologize that our Zoom space is full. However, those who cannot join the Zoom can watch this webinar in the YouTube channel. And the committee has prepared two prizes for this webinar. So why don't you stay to the end? And we appreciate you all who spend morning time to be in this webinar. Last, as head of the MPBI, I hope this webinar is fruitful and inspiring to all of us. Happy webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Tjandra. Dear participants, allow me to explain this webinar in short. This event is an online seminar or webinar emphasizing on the topic of teaching English to young learners, TEYL. Through this webinar, it is expected that all of the participants will be able to explore wider knowledge on how to integrate critical literacy into teaching English for Indonesian school children. This webinar has begun with an opening ceremonial, and it will be followed by the presentation of the speaker, question and answer session, quiz time, closing prayer, and questionnaire session. If you have any question during the session, please type them in the chat column. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Ms. Christina Tjandra, MA OCT. The session will be led by Tjandra as the moderator. Tjandra.
Well, it's an honor that Ibu Christina Tjandra spends her time together with us to share ideas and experiences this morning. And it is evening in Canada. And she will be staying with us all for about 1.5 hours. And by that time, you see that it is about 10:30 p.m. in Canada. Now I'm going to read her curriculum vitae. Christina Tjandra, Master of Arts, Ontario Certified Teacher, earned her bachelor degrees in environmental design from University of Toronto in 2012 and in elementary education K6 from York University, Toronto, Canada in 2015. She earned her Master of Arts in Language and Literacies Education from University of Toronto in November 2019. And she is now pursuing her PhD degree in Language and Literacies Education, Department of Curriculum, Teaching and Learning in the same university, University of Toronto. Her dissertation is now in progress, and she got a grant from her research for her research project. Currently, she is a review mentor working together with senior reviewers and journal editors in journal writing processes to new scholars. Well, audience, what about her publications? You know that her publications are quite numerous. I just mentioned some of them, among others, Capturing Our Languages Through Photography, Newcomer Children, Plurilinguaging Through the Multilingual Linguistic Landscape, Digital Autobiographical Identity Text as Critical Plurilingual Pedagogy, Young Children as Playwrights and Their Participation in Classroom Peer Culture of Socio-Dramatic Play, Improvisation-Based Storytelling through Tableau, Fostering Students' Creativity, Communication, and Critical Thinking Skills. And her professional career from 2019 up to now, she is a K6 occasional teacher in Toronto District School Board. She also has an experience of being teacher at LICAM's ESL program at Victoria University, Toronto. From 2017 up to now, she is an Ontario certified teacher for primary junior K6, Council of the Ontario College of Teachers, and she received kinds of awards from 2003 up to 2014, which I cannot mention one by one. Well, audience, for about 1.5 hours ahead, Ibu Christina Tjandra will talk about critical literacy for Indonesian school children. Well, Bapak and Ibu, students and alumni, without further ado, Ibu Christina Tjandra, time is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Hendra Sukmana, for the very kind introduction. And thank you everybody for being here today. So I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay. All right. So good morning, everyone. My name is Christina Tjandra. I am a PhD student from the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, University of Toronto in Canada. I am also a K-6 Ontario certified teacher with the Toronto District School Board. Before I proceed my presentation, I would like to say thank you to Vidya Mandala Catholic University and to Dr. Tejas Sukmana, who has invited me to speak in the webinar today. So today's topic is critical literacy for Indonesian school children, what and how. And in this talk, I will discuss about the foundations and key elements of critical literacy, its implementation in the classroom. And I will also discuss about how to implement such pedagogy virtually in our unprecedented times during the pandemic right now. So let's get started. All right, so a little bit about me. I was born in Indonesia and I studied under the Indonesian education system until grade 7. So back then, I guess that was early to mid 90s. The curriculum and way of teaching and learning would be very different compared to what you do in classrooms today. During my middle school, I studied under the Singaporean curriculum. I moved to Canada when I was 15, and I finished my high school here in Canada. So I have lived in Canada as my home base ever since. Right now, I am a K-6 Ontario certified teacher, and I am affiliated with the Toronto District School Board. So Toronto District School Board is equivalent to Dinas Pendidikan Malang or Dinas Pendidikan Surabaya. My teaching and research experiences are with the school board focuses on urban and inner city schools in Toronto. So these schools have high population of students of color, minoritized students, many are English language learners, some are immigrants and refugees, and many come from lower socioeconomic class. I am also affiliated with the University of Toronto. As I said, I'm currently a PhD student, and my research is centered on educational social linguistic, multilingual education, plurilingualism, creativity in second language teaching and learning, and inclusive education. So first of all, I must say that teaching critical literacy is not just about ticking curriculum expectations in reading, listening, writing, or speaking. So critical literacy is more than that. Critical literacy is not merely about giving students grades, but it is about transformation. It is about taking action. And therefore, we need to have a good foundation about what critical literacy is before we attempt to teach critical literacy. Therefore, in the first half of my presentation, I will talk about the framework and the foundation of critical literacy in order for us to have a better understanding about the how, the what, and what it really means to teach critical literacy. Here, I will also discuss how critical literacy is interrelated to social justice education. Then on the second half of the presentation, I will talk about the delivery and implementation of critical literacy in the classroom. I will also share a curriculum plan with 12 activities that I developed, something that you can actually use in your own classroom. Last but not least, I will briefly talk about assessments at the end. All right. So, the pedagogy of critical literacy. What is that? What is it? So to get us started, I would like to give a very quick overview about what is meant by the term critical literacy. Here we can see the word critical. The word critical could be defined as to transform. If we look at what critical pedagogy means, it means a pedagogy that transforms. Now let's get to critical literacy. In brief, critical literacy could be seen as a literacy pedagogy that transforms people. So we must see critical literacy as an ideology, not just about critical reading or critical writing, but it is about transformation. We will get into what is meant by a pedagogy that transforms as I go along in this presentation. So according to Freire and Macedo, critical literacy is the ability to read the word and the world. So we need to understand that literacy is both a concept and a social practice that must be linked historically to knowledge and power on the one hand, and political and cultural struggle over language and experience on the other. With that, when we meet our students in our classroom, we need to understand that literacy is a terrain of struggle. That is, literacy had to be fought both as an ideological construct and also as a social movement. Critical literacy engages students in reading and writing through a critical lens to expose and disrupt unequitable power relations and social prejudices found in all kinds of text, print and non-print text. What is meant by this is that literacy does not begin and end with the process of learning to read and write critically, but also through social construction to give learners opportunity to give meaning and expression to their own needs as a project of self and also social empowerment. For the very last point here, critical literacy aims to create pedagogical spaces for students' agentive participation that enact and promote social justice. With that said, I would like to highlight that critical literacy is closely linked and cannot be separated from social justice education. Now, I will quickly discuss the elements of social justice. So I thought it would be very useful for you if I go through these elements. And of course, whatever lessons or focus you're doing with your students, make sure your lessons target each of these elements. So the very first one, self-love and knowledge. So this is actually an opportunity to learn who they are and where they come from. This is an opportunity to give for students to understand different aspects of their identities and the histories associated with it. So through unpacking the matter, if students come across or realizes negative stereotypes regarding his or her identity, it is something that can be deconstructed with your class. And this is actually can be a very beautiful teaching moment. The second one, respect for others. This is an opportunity to share knowledge about their own cultural background with their classmates. This is also an opportunity for students to learn to listen with kindness and empathy to the experiences of their peers. This also helps students to deconstruct stereotypes about their peers' identities. Issues of social injustice. Here, us, teachers, will help students to make links between the historical roots of oppression and the impact it has on lived experiences and material condition of people today. The fourth one, social movement and social change. This is for students to learn about examples of movement of iconic and everyday people standing together to address the issues of social injustices. Awareness raising. This creates an opportunity for students to teach each other about issues that they learned about. They can share what they're currently learning in school to their friends and as well as their family members. And social justice is nothing without social action. So the last point here, social action. Here, teachers must provide opportunity to take action on issues that affect students and their communities. We also help students to identify issues they feel passionate about and learn the skills to creating change firsthand. So going back to critical literacy. So why is this important? Why do we need to teach critical literacy? Here, Jang wrote that all texts are positioned and positioning. They are positioned by the writer's point of view, and the linguistic and semiotic choices made by the writer are designed to produce effects that position the reader, positioning us. They entice us into their way of seeing and understanding the world, into their version of reality. So every text is just one set of perspectives of the world. All right, so let's take a look at these two photos. So on the slides, there are two photos taken from different angles during the US inauguration day in 2017. As you can see, let's pay attention to the picture on the left. Okay, so this is a Twitter feed posted by the US Vice President Mike Pence. He wrote, "Making the historic journey from US Capitol to the White House with Karen and our children at our side is a memory we will forever cherish." Look at the photo. The photo looks grand, isn't it? It depicts a large crowd and portraying that he and his family are in the center of attention. This is exactly how he would like the world to view him. He used this photo to position himself in a positive way. And he is positioning his Twitter followers, or us right now, seeing this photo, to believing his importance and popularity. Okay, so right now, let's take a look at the picture on the right. So on the other hand, this picture is taken from a different angle by an onlooker during the inauguration day. This picture depicts a very different story, as you can see. There were no crowds. The benches were empty. So this picture was taken by a person called Deborah Berry. She even wrote an uninteresting comment alongside the photo. She just wrote, Vice President Mike Pence just passed. That's it. So I'm showing these two images to give you an example on the importance of criticality. So in our everyday lives, we encounter many media texts just like this. Might be in different contexts, not always political, could be anything really. And everything that we consume with no criticality will shape our perspective and interpretation of the world in the way the author intended us to feel about a topic. So when we teach critical literacy, we can start with the intersectionality wheel. So as you can see here, there are so many endless topics that you can pick from. You can talk about classism with your students, about ableism, about racism, about colonialization, and so on. And we can also understand understand our privileges and identities intersecting with each other. These topics are actually topics that emerge in our daily lives from the social media or from the news. As teachers, we always want to give opportunities for discussion, for having dialogic conversation with our students about current issues that is happening in Indonesia or in the world. For the focus of my presentation today, I will focus on the topic of discrimination in the context of gender and sexism. All right. Now, let's take a look at examples of these advertisements here. The advertisement on the left is a popular cleaning product in Canada. It's called Mr. Clean. And this ad was released for Mother's Day celebration. And as you can see, the quote, "This Mother's Day, get back to the job that really matters." Here, women are portrayed as someone who should be responsible to do the housework. Having a clean house is seen as a woman's or a wife's duty, not something that is shared with her husbands nor her children. The picture on the right is an advertisement from a clothing company, probably you know it, Gap. The boy is represented as the little scholar, while the girl is represented as the social butterfly. My question is, why can't it be the other way around? It seems that our society, either you are in Asia or in North America, we tend to portray one's characteristics and personality by their gender. Boy as the strong and smart ones, and girls are portrayed as the delicate and less intelligent ones. So these are just some few examples on the importance of criticality. We need to teach our students that we may not just be consumers of the media, because the media shape our culture. It shapes the perception and it shapes the belief of our society. Now, let's take a look at these two advertisements that I found online from Indonesia. So the advertisement on the left was originally taken from a TV ad. And it began with this woman feeling super sad and not confident due to her dark skin color. So in this advertisement, this type of ad teaches the audience and the Indonesian society in general that women who have lighter skin color will have a higher self-confidence and will be more popular among men. This type of ad creates a standard on how women should look. So just imagine what damage could such teaching impact the girls and men's perception about this stereotypical gender norms. In Indonesia, it is very easy for women to fall into this belief and creates this unreasonable beauty standard because our skin color is not naturally fair. Aside from that, why do women need to be objectified? Why do we need to be the delicate one? Why can't we be portrayed as the tough, strong ones? The advertisement on the right, on the other hand, is depicting that men are the strong and powerful ones. Again, why can't women be portrayed as a strong and a powerful one, just like men? And how come men are not allowed to be sensitive and to get in touch with his emotional intelligence? Why is that? We need to question that. So when students are exposed to this type of media text in their everyday lives, they need the skills to identify the gender stereotypes and sexism. They need the skills to confront the gender norms. And they also need the skills to articulate their thought critically. So in this slide, I would like to go through the key aspects of critical literacy. So first, critical literacy should be looked as a lens, a frame, a perspective, or way of being. Again, critical literacy is very closely linked to social justice education. And as teachers, we always need to remember to approach it as a teaching lens. Second, we need to draw on students' fund of knowledge and multimodal practices. Here, I just want to highlight the importance for teachers to make the effort to know the students in a personal level, to know their interest and their knowledge outside of school. We also need to know their multimodal skills and preferable way of communication. Reading and writing is no longer the two things that defined literacy. Literacy has gone beyond that, towards making multimodal products, such as creating a voice recording, a piece of art, a PSA is the public service announcement, a movie, and so on. Third, we need to remember that texts are never neutral. We need to question the perspectives of others. We need to teach students to question the source of the text. We need to teach them to question who the writer is, who creates it, what is the author's or creator's credibility and intention. We need to teach our students to identify the hidden agendas of the text. In the same time, we need to encourage our students to find different resources that talks about the same subject or the same topic. How are they represented differently? What are the similarities and differences? We need to teach them that texts are never neutral. Fourth, we should analyze our own reading of text and unpack the position from what we, as teachers, engage in literacy work. We as humans, we have our own beliefs and perspectives on how we view the world. And this is our job to identify our own stance. However, in teaching critical literacy, we should not spoon-feed students with our personal perceptions and perspectives. Instead, we need to be critical about what we stand for, and we need to share these skills with our students. Fifth, critical literacy needs to focus on social issues such as race, class, gender, or disability, and the ways in which language shape our understanding of these issues. These issues are very profound in our daily lives. However, most of the time, we are not equipped with the tools to be ready to talk about these issues in a classroom. We are too afraid. Sometimes we might think, oh no, that is too sensitive to talk in my classroom. However, we need to unpack these in a dialogic conversations in our classroom. This is our responsibility as teachers. And this is what I always tell my students. We need to be responsive, not reactive. Sixth, critical literacy should be a transformative practice. What is meant by this is that it has to transform our lives, but also our community's life for the better. It is a social movement, and sometimes critical literacy could be seen as a political project, a project that strives for equality and justice. Seventh, the text and productions are essential to critical literacy work. We live in a fast-paced multimodal world. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, right? And so on. So therefore, the process of creating or recreating multimodal text is essential in the learning of critical literacy. This type of production will not only improve students' ownership and autonomy in their own learning, but it also improves their media literacy skills, both as consumers and also as producers. So the very last point, critical literacy is about reconstructing and redesigning text, images, practices to convey different, more just, equitable messages. I think this point is closely related to the previous point. And after a student identifies a text, analyze the text, then we need to give opportunity for the students to create a text that represent a more just and equitable message. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about the pedagogy of critical literacy. We're gonna talk about the delivery and implementation. So there are 4 points that I want you to remember about how to deliver critical literacy in the classroom. So the very first one, critical content. The second one, student-centered dialogic process. The third one, democratic process. And the fourth one, self-reflective process. So critical content. Lessons have to be emphasized, the identification, assessment, and deconstruction of dominant discourse. We need to adopt critical materials that are engaging, current, and easily understood by students. So this involves real life and meaningful issues that is relatable to the students' lives. It needs to be student-centered, and it needs to be conducted through this dialogic process. Means we need to engage students to share their personal experiences, observation to underlying values, their assumptions, their interest, or understanding of power in relation in their lives as they see it through their eyes. And to do so, I always encourage group exercises or large class discussions that demonstrate the gap between dominant discourse and reality. For example, social class, social problems, investigating how much money it takes not to be poor, and so on. Democratic process. It means to encourage maximal participation in class, includes students' feedback and validate the diverse contributions. It is also about encouraging freedom of expression. Self-reflective process. This is about being reflective. It is about continuously asking questions about the world, but also towards our own perspectives of the world. You can do this by allowing self-selected projects that involve research on particular injustice with corresponding transformative action or activism, something that students can personally relate to. So I developed this curriculum plan for the junior grades. So that is grade 4 to 6. And you can always adapt it for younger or older kids as well. And I imagine that the students come from various diverse backgrounds, that is from different economic, ethnic, and they might identify their gender differently and so on. All right. So for teachers facilitating critical literacy, it is very, very important to set a class agreement about how we should engage with each other when discussing heavy topics. So these are class rules taken from the tribe's learning communities. Attentive listening, listening with your eyes, ears, and heart, appreciation, no put downs, right to pass, choose to pass when called upon, mutual respect, treat others the way you want to be treated. Usually, you will ask the children in your classroom to memorize this and cite this agreement in the beginning of the class or in the beginning of the school day. So in my past classrooms, we would write this in a huge piece of paper, and the children add their signatures. So this type of thing creates a safe space to talk about heavy issues, and also for them to learn how to respect and appreciate different perspectives. It also builds a stronger learning community. Now, this is a guideline for both teachers and students, but more so for teachers to remember. Always strive for intellectual humility. Recognize the difference between opinion and informed knowledge. Let go of personal anecdotal evidence and look at broader societal patterns. Notice your own defensive reactions and attempt to use these reactions as entry points for gaining deeper self-knowledge. Recognize how your own social positionality, such as your race, your belief, your class, your gender, your sexuality, your ability status, informs your perspectives and reactions. So for the purpose of this presentation, as I said before, I will be focusing on critical literacy related to confronting gender bias and stereotypes. Based on the curriculum plan that I'm going to share with you today, these are the critical curriculum outcomes. To acknowledge that we all have biases and stereotypes regarding gender differences. To understand male and female stereotypes in our society. To identify in what ways their lives, this means our students' lives, have been affected by gender stereotypes. To identify how aspects of these stereotypes are related to injustices, inequality, and bullying in school. And lastly, for students to be able to put their criticality into community in this context, school, action, or activism. So what you can do is to co-construct overarching questions with your students. So within the topic of confronting gender bias and stereotypes, it can be something like this. What are the characteristics of male and female stereotypes in our society? What makes sexism difficult to see? What advantages and disadvantages do I notice because of gender? What community action can we implement to reverse these biases and stereotypes? The second activity that you can ask your students to do is to creating multimodal identity text as a representation of themselves. It can be a collage, like the picture on the left. It can be a drawing, or a combination of a drawing and writing, like the one you see in the middle and on the right here. So this can be done digitally, like the one in the center, or traditionally, like the one on the left and the right. So in English language teaching, this is also an opportunity for students to learn spelling and new vocabularies. And this type of activity is good for all grades. I am talking, you can start this from grade, I don't know, 1, and so grade 2 maybe up to graduate students, because I also did this last year when I was in school. So before we get to the nitty-gritty of the curriculum plan, let's talk about the framework of critical literacy practiced. So we will go through this together. These 4 points are something that you need to remember when you create your lesson plan. So what I usually do is that when I create lesson plan, I would have these 4 points in mind, and I would determine which activities fall under which point. And I would make sure I have targeted all 4. Sometimes in an activity, 2 or 3 of the framework points might overlap, and that is completely fine. Okay, so I will walk you through this. The first one, disrupting the commonplace. What is meant by disrupting the commonplace is to see and analyze things through new lenses. In this case, we will support students to problematize their existing knowledge. And they need to interrogate the text by asking, how is this text trying to position me? To do so, for example, students study the language and discourses that shape our identity and how language construct our cultural discourses and belief, and how to do this. So through the proposed activities that I will discuss in the presentation, students will engage in a dialectical process as co-inquirers who are conducting their own independent research. Through this exercise, a student will understand that texts are not neutral, and they will continuously identify and problematize discourses or printed text or media text. So for example, disrupting the commonplace of gender stereotypes, for example, that men are more athletic or more intelligent than women. And based on their own inquiry and research, they will identify successful female athletes and female intellectuals. Considering multiple viewpoints. What is meant by considering multiple viewpoints is to imagine standing in other people's shoes, to understand experience and text from our own perspectives, but also from the viewpoint of others, and to understand different perspectives concurrently. Through this 10 points, students will be encouraged to interrogate text by asking whose voices are heard and whose are missing. And students will also be invited to pay attention and to seek out the voices of the marginalized. How to do this? So in the activities that I'll be talking about shortly, students will be invited to examine issues related to gender through different lenses that are different from what they're used to. So with this strategy, a student will complicate what they already know. And through investigating multiple perspectives, students will be able to critically frame agendas and conceptualize strategies to make a just world by considering different walks of life and to avoid oversimplifying human experience. Focusing on the socio-political, in the sense, socio-political issues. So focusing on socio-political issues means to go beyond understanding the socio-political system which we belong to. It is for students to use literacy to engage in the politics that are exposed in their daily lives. That means students will challenge the legitimacy of unequal power relationships. Therefore, we can see this as a political project to create a just, more equitable world. How to do this? So students will recall how texts are not neutral, and they will identify how they are socially and politically constructed to achieve certain agendas and to privilege one group against another. Students will identify dominant social practices related to gender inequality to unpack how those discourses impact society's perception of gender, which result on unequal power relationships. And the very last point, it is nothing without taking action. So Lee mentioned that critical awareness of literacy education is not critical literacy unless action is taken. Here, action means to read and communicate new lines of thinking and to push others to question their own perspectives and understanding of the world. In this case, students are using language to exercise power, to question practices of privileges and injustices. So in the plan that I will share with you, I'm targeting 4 big areas: oral communication, reading, writing, and media literacy. So in oral communication, the aim is to listen in order to understand and respond appropriately in a variety of situations for a variety of purposes. In reading is to read and demonstrate an understanding of a variety of literary, graphic, and informational text, using a range of strategies to construct meaning. In writing, students will generate, gather, organize ideas and information to write for an intended purpose and audience. In media literacy, students will create a variety of media text for different purposes and audiences, using appropriate forms, conventions, and techniques. So I personally like to start a lesson with a mentor text. So this is a book called The Breadwinner, and I've read this to the grade 4-5, and they loved it. So this book is about Parvana, a girl who is living in the Afghan refugee camp, living under the Taliban rule. Parvana is a rarity. There, girls are not allowed to read, but she can read and she experiences life. She does things to break the gender norms and stereotypes. By the way, there is also a movie based on this book as well. So in a virtual learning context, you can read mentor text live to your students like this, okay? Or you can create a private YouTube channel where you can read books to your students, and your students can go back to it and listen to you in their own times. Okay. So to start, you can share this video with your students. We will watch this together, okay?
To be a boy. What does it mean to be a boy, in your opinion?
Sorry. Give me a second, sorry.
To be a boy. What does it mean to be a boy, in your opinion?
To be strong, to not cry.
To be tough, athletic.
To be confident and to always keep your head up and be optimistic.
It doesn't just mean like you're born a boy, you are a boy.
You can switch genders and go to a girl if you're a boy.
Being a boy is a lot harder than some people may think.
Boys are told to like play sports and be tough. So that's what a lot of people think it means, but I just think it means that you look different than girls do.
You may have different hair or different body parts.
I don't really know what it means to be a boy besides physical attributes. That's pretty much it.
You don't think there's anything else?
Like hormones.
Girls have different things on their bodies and have the advantage of different things like being pregnant.
Besides anatomy, what's the #1 thing that makes boys and girls different?
I just think that the way that people think they're supposed to be.
Whatever like the stereotype is, you watch sports, you're rough and aggressive and whatever.
Girls, they play with dollies. And boys, they play rough. A lot of my friends that are girls don't even like dolls. In fact, they're scared of them and they'd rather like play in the dirt.
Most boys think girls are all about makeup, dresses, and like sleepover parties and stuff.
Some people think girls are just baby making machines that stay at home and are just housewives. Like I've seen pictures on the internet of cleaning kits for girls that aren't sold for boys, like a pink mop that girls can push around. I don't like it.
Boys have superheroes like outfits and Legos, and then the girls are all Barbie or baby dolls and princesses.
Society like planted that image in their brain, like you're supposed to do this and you are supposed to do this.
I don't really think it matters, like if you consider like girl stuff and boy stuff, because everyone does their own things and it doesn't really matter.
We're all human, so I just feel like there's no point in saying you're a girl, you're a boy. That's it.
Okay, so as you can see, the children talking in this video are around their age, so they can relate to their thinking. So based on this video, ask your students to share their opinions about the video. This is a really good warm-up activity to reintroduce the students to the focus of the topic. While you are reading the mentor text, so while you're reading the novel to your student, while you are having class discussions with your students, you will collect important vocabularies as you go along and make sure your students are aware when you add new words to the list. These words will be words of the month. As you can see, these words are actually driven from their hands-on learning experiences. And from this list, you can create so many activities, okay? So for example, you can create an activity focusing on spelling. And also encourage your students to use these words in their writing and during class discussions. Okay, so next we will focus on writing focused activity. So in the first writing activity, a student can create a self-reflection on their perception of male and female biases and stereotypes. And see this video that we just watched, they can use this video as a tool, as a resource. Then students can create a self-reflection about their own advantages and disadvantages of their own gender. And lastly, students will create a self-reflection about how they, as individuals, perceive themselves. So, for example, they can write about how their hobbies and interests meet or not meet the society's gender expectations. Students can also write about how their culture, ethnic background, socioeconomic background, for example, play a part in the construction of their gender identity or conformity. And remember the identity text that they created, this picture right here. Okay, so they can write about it. They can write everything, all the words, based on the words that they've written before. So in writing activities, actually in all activities really, when you work with kids, it is a very good practice to present students with a success criteria. So this picture is an example of success criteria. And this picture was taken from one of the classrooms that I was in. So let's take a look at this together, okay? So great writers include reasoning. So thoughts are explained clearly, express your deep thinking, ask questions in your writing. Communication, make sure your grammar is correct, use juicy words. So juicy words means instead of writing the word happy, ask your students to write excited or joyful. Instead of writing the word nice, okay, ask your students to write pleasant or friendly, for example. So use words that are not, I don't know, I usually say this, boring words. So remind your students to use correct words and also correct spelling as well. Organization. So this is about paragraph writing. So make sure the ideas is grouped and to pay attention to the sequences and connections of ideas. So you can use the burger rule. Here, I love the burger rule. I'll show you. There you go. So first, tell your students to structure the writing with the progression from context, content, and conclusion. And then within each paragraph, you can look at the burger on the right. Always start with a topic sentence, followed by supporting sentences, and close it with a concluding sentence. Okay, next one, conventions. So conventions remind your students to use correct punctuations. So such as the use of comma, the periods, spacing, for example, and to use capital letters in the right place. So in the beginning of every sentence, for example, and use indentation in the beginning of each paragraph. And last but not least, remind them to focus when they write. No plagiarism. And to proofread their writing before submitting to you. The next activity that the students can do is to analyze discourses of sexism in printed advertisement. So there are 4 steps to do this. All right, we're gonna get into the fun part now. Okay, so the very first one, ask your students to research and generate 2 to 3 printed advertisement. You can send this as homework. So, and I encourage you to write a note to their parents, especially when they're younger, or basically kids in general. So write a note to their parents to sit next to them when they do research online. Or you can ask them to turn on the child-friendly searches in their internet security setting. Because trust me, you don't want your students to see inappropriate types of ads online. Then you can ask your students to write about their judgment of the advertisements that they found online. So this is a writing activity. You can go back to success criteria, okay? And as a teacher, you can tell your students, write a page, write 3 paragraphs about it, or do like this short synthesis about it. It's up to you. Then ask your students to pick one of their favorite advertisement or analysis about it, and ask them to present just the gist of it for a maximum of 2 to 3 minutes in front of the class. And lastly, after the students present their analysis, engage your students in a class discussion to give comments and feedback as well. So these are just some of the printed ads that I collected online. Obviously, there are more out there. So for example, let's take a look at the ad of Dr. Pepper. So let's see, this is Dr. Pepper right here. So Dr. Pepper is in Indonesia, it is it's like a soft drink like Coca-Cola or Sprite. So let's take a look at it for an example. It says just 10 manly calories. It's not for women. Or this one right here, this one here, Dove, care design for real men. I have a question, what is a real man? Right? So as we can see, this is an opportunity for students to understand the relationship between images and words, and to understand the purpose of the advertisement, the hidden messages, and to understand how this text portrays sexism and support gender stereotypes. I'll show you more examples. Okay, let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at the picture at the most left, right here. Some men say more with their hands than they ever could with their words. Okay, I personally, when I saw this, I found this extremely troubling. So when kids are exposed to this type of ad, okay, it's teaching our kids that men communicate with their hands, not with their words. And things like this can be very problematic. Let's take a look at the other one. Let's take a look at this. Stop being a baby and start acting like a real man. Okay, so again, what is this kind of ad teaching our boys? Not to cry, to be tough, to be rough, right? So this picture of the car right here, in case you're wondering what this is about, this is a car produced specifically for women because it has a handbag carrier inside. There's a lipstick holder, and there is a mirror designed as especially only for you to apply your eyeliner and so on. Okay, so same, the one right here. This is an ad for the store Target, where girls are always associated with the color pink, and you know, they play Barbie dolls, while boys are a little wild and rough and play cool electric guitar, for example. So ask your students to analyze these and ask them to put their thinking in writing and then talk about it in class. The next activity is a cool one. It is about taking action. So the focus here is to redesign media text and to communicate a new line of thinking. So based on the ads that they have gathered, right, and talked about, now they can redesign it. So here, students can actually rewrite the statements of the ads to defy gender stereotypes. So this is not a lot of work, and they can do this individually based on their favorite ad, basically. All right, so let's move on. Okay. So in the last few slides, we've talked about how students can analyze discourses of sexism in printed advertisement. Now, they can analyze the media text, such as commercials. So what you can do as a teacher, if you want to do this type of activity, before you show this video to your student in your own time, you're going to prepare a script. Okay, so you can just copy the captions and write it in a document and share it with your students. So that is also reading, with listening as well. So when you play the video to your students, you can turn on the captions and play it multiple times for your students so that they can practice their listening skills. So let's watch this, this video together. This is an ad for Dr. Pepper.
Hey, ladies. Enjoying the film? Of course not. Because this is our movie! And Dr. Pepper 10 is our soda. It's only 10 manly calories, but with all 23 flavors of Dr. Pepper. It's what guys want, like this. Catchphrase. So you can keep the romantic comedies and lady drinks. We're good. Dr. Pepper 10, it's not for women.
All right, so after they watch a video like this, present the script and help your students to analyze it. Teach your students to read between the lines. Then you can lead a discussion about how this video portrays the stereotype of men and women in the society. So the next activity, well, this is not a real activity really, but more like an example to show students about ads that defy sexism and gender stereotypes. So this video is actually in Russian. It's not even in English. This video is in Russian, but it has English captions. So like the previous video, you can prepare a video script for your students, okay, using the captions in English. And the reason why we are showing this to the student is because in the next activity, they're gonna have to create their own video to defy sexism. Okay, so let's watch this video together. I love this so much. So let's watch this.
Исти Боже, сделаны наши девчонки, ла-ла-ла-ла-ла-ла-ла-ла-ла-ла-ла. Из цветочков, из звоночков, из переглядок и мармеладок сделаны наши девчонки. Из железа, из самоточи и сражений сделаны наши девчонки. Из упорства, из красы, которой гордится вся нация, сделаны наши девчонки. Из синяков и тумаков, из отваги сжатых кулаков, из независимости и мастерства, из страсти и сердца и достоинства, из воли крепче Кремля, из силы и огня, из свободы от чужих мнений, из свершений и достижений сделаны наши девчонки.
All right, so it's a beautiful video, isn't it? I really love this. So in the next video that we will watch, this is about two girls in India who, and they defy gender stereotypes. Again, this video is in Hindi, but again, there is an English caption with it. So let's watch this.
बापू कहते हैं बच्चे जो देखते हैं उसी से सीखते हैं. जुग जुग जिया, अब यहाँ के तौर तरीके ही देख लो. जुग जुग जिया सुलाला नवा भवनवा के भाग जागल हो. लड़के क्या कर सकते हैं और लड़कियां क्या नहीं, ये तो यहाँ दिख ही जाता है. भाग जागल हो. पिताजी का पेशा ही ले लो, शायद लड़कों को विरासत में मिलता है, मगर ऐसा नहीं कि लड़कियों को कुछ नहीं मिलता. मैंने देखा है उन्हें भी मिलता है. गृहस्थी, रसोई, घर की जिम्मेदारी. नाची नाची गावेली बहिनिया लाला के खेला बेली हो. जुग जुग जिया सुलाला नवा.
क्यों काका, दाढ़ी बना दो?
हाँ हाँ.
बापू, ये लड़की होके उस तरह चलाएगी?
अरे बेटा, उस तरह को क्या पता कि चलाए वाला लड़का है या लड़की. क्यों? चल बेटा, फटाफट दाढ़ी बना.
हाँ.
जुग जुग जिया तू बाबोनिया के दुनिया जोर कैलू हो. जुग जुग जिया तू बाबोनिया के दुनिया जोर कैलू हो. सही कहते हैं बापू. बच्चे जो देखते हैं उसी से सीखते हैं ना 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 ना
Okay, so this type of video might be interesting for children because it'll become a cross-cultural learning for them. What I meant by this is that they can learn from the gender norms of other countries and how the society or the people are taking actions to promote gender equality. So this is also an opportunity in your discussions or in their writing activity. They can also reflect to what they see in Indonesia. Okay, so, okay. So activity number 11 here, okay, this is a super fun activity to do. So option one, students can rewrite the sexist commercial, or option two, they can make a brand new PSA. PSA is public service announcement to support gender equality. So I've done this type of activity with the grade 4 and grade 5 students. So what happened before, the kids actually wrote their own script and then they co-edit with each other. And then they film each other with an iPad. So in Indonesia, the students can use their phones, for example, and then they can edit the video. They're so techy. This is what I found about kids this day. Sometimes they're teaching me things all the time. And at the end, they will present their PSA. So PSA is a really fun short video to make. And PSA usually goes between 30 to 60 seconds. That's it. It is a short and sweet video. That's it. So in terms of COVID, if virtual learning is taking place, instead of working with their classmates, ask them to work with their immediate family members, with their mom, with their dad, with their grandparents at home. Okay, so they're gonna film their family members and then they're gonna edit. And then all can be done conveniently in their house. And I must say that this is a really good opportunity for the children to be creative and to engage their parents and family members in their learning in school. So actually, you know, the parents are actually learning about this as well. The last activity that I'm going to share with you today is a photography project. Actually, this type of work is usually best when there is in-person learning in school. So students can go around the school with a camera and they can taking pictures of activities that defy gender norms in school walls. So for example, this girl right here is doing kickboxing. This boy here is dancing ballet. The girl right here is playing rugby ball. And this one right here is playing soccer. And here boys are cooking in the school kitchen, for example. So these are just examples on what they can do. Then they will write a concise, to the point statement on the top of each paragraph, on each photograph. So for example, a kick right in the stereotypes. Or this one here, I can give mud mask a new meaning. It's really encouraging, it's really powerful statements. Okay, so everybody, let's move to assessment. Let's talk about assessment right now. So as we all know, there are 3 types of assessments, right? So there's assessment for learning, assessment as learning, and assessment of learning. So assessment for learning is usually conducted before the beginning of the unit. It is an assessment to know students' current understanding of the learning content. You can do this through either having conversations with your student or through a simple writing activity. To give best facilitation for students, this assessment is important. Okay, so you don't want to forget this. assessment as learning. This is my favorite one. Okay, so to me, personally, this is very important. So this is an ongoing informal assessment throughout the unit. Again, you can do this by asking students to do writing exercises to explain their thinking and their understanding of a topic, okay? Or after a discussion, you can ask them to write about it. And through having these informal discussions with the class, okay? Or they can do their own self-assessments. So in a real classroom, what I usually like to do, instead of the kids sitting on their desk, we usually have in Canada, we have a carpet in front of the class. And the arrangement of the desk, I don't know how Indonesia is right now, but the arrangement of the desk was very different than how I was when I was a learner back in Indonesia a long time ago. So the desk is usually by groups, okay? And we have this carpet in the front of the class. And we usually invite students to come to sit on the carpet in the beginning of the school day or during lessons, and we just talk about things. So assessment as learning, okay? Again, this is very important. And students in the same time, assessment as learning, they can actually also doing their own self-assessment as well. So they can tell you through writing, where am I at in my understanding of this topic? They can do their self-assessment. Assessment of learning is different. So this is usually at the very end. So this is summative in nature. So for example, you will assess the end product of them creating or recreating the text or the PSA, for example. I want you to be careful when you use assessment of learning, because sometimes assessment of learning, it doesn't say much about what the students actually know or can do. You usually know more about your students' capabilities during assessment as learning, because this is the time where you're actually engaging them in important discussions and conversations. This one here, the one on the left, the picture on the left, the thumbs up, thumbs down method. I use this all the time in the class, and this is something that you probably already doing in your class as well. If not, do it. It is super awesome, and it helps you know where your students are at quickly. So the thumbs up and thumbs down. Okay, so ask your students, can you tell me with your hands where you're at? Okay, so this one, I can do this. I get this. This one, so-so. And this one here, I do need a little bit of help. So quickly, you can do this 3 seconds, and you can just see where your students are at, write anecdotal notes, and that's it. Something that I also found useful is the Twitter wall. So the Twitter wall is something that you can see here on the right here. So this format here, you can actually get this online. So at the end of each class or at the end of each discussion, ask each student to synthesize their thinking in 20 words or less. Okay, so this is a quick assessment to understand students' thinking about the current topic that you're talking about. So in a virtual learning, you can do this electronically. So you can create a shared folder, for example, in whatever platform that you're using with your student to teach. And they can drop this in that folder and they can read each other's work. So this is actually the real Twitter wall in the classroom. This is a picture that is taken from one of the classrooms that I was teaching in. So as you can see here, everything on the left, those are their names. And they post their synthesis right here on the white papers. So everybody in the class can actually read each other's thinking. This is building a sense of community. They're learning together. They're having conversations together. Okay, so the last point that I'm going to talk about today is about how to practice critical literacy across the curriculum. So first, critical literacy and library. Here I'm talking library as a subject, okay? So let your students ask, do we see ourselves in books that are available in the school library? What is missing here? What effort should we do to support gender equity through the available books? So this can lead to a letter writing activity to the librarian, for example, and they can request, social justice books that they already research, for example. Critical literacy and mathematics investigations. So this can be connected, for example, to data management, okay, where students can create surveys to analyze if their schools support a democratic learning environment or defying gender norms, for example. They can analyze the gym activities if there are any divide in the gender, okay, and they can investigate other roles that students have in school and if they are placed in gender-based roles. So students can analyze the data and they will present it in mathematical language. So for example, using percentages and so on. Critical literacy and social studies. Social studies is large. So students can investigate various social issues in the social studies classroom. Critical literacy and music. So here students can actually create music as a form of resistance with a music teacher. Critical literacy and drama studies or media arts. So this is pretty much what we talk about today. To write, to produce PSA, to make short movies to defy gender norms. And lastly, critical literacy in health and physical education. So we can ask them to investigate gender norms and gender-based activities during their physical education class. To conclude, I am leaving you with this quote to ponder. So I'm going to read this. Critical pedagogy is a state of becoming, a way of being in the world and with the world, a never-ending process that involves struggle and pain, but also hope and joy shaped and maintained by a humanizing pedagogy. You can take a picture of this if you want. Okay. So everybody, thank you so much for listening to me today. I hope the things that I share with you today are things that you can actually implement in your own classroom. And thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Christina, Tjandra, for the inspiring ideas and your experiences. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and it is time now. There's a Q&A session. I've got several questions already. And Christina will answer the questions one by one. Now, the first question is coming from Ibu Yudita Putri. Ibu Yudita is asking, I'd like to ask about the differences between English teacher and parents' perspective. As English teachers, we try to communicate critical thinking to the students through teaching and learning activities and media. For example, the text "Following Your Passion" is given to the students. However, the students cannot comprehend the text, since at home they are directed by their parents to follow what is instructed to them. How can we respond to such cases? Can you give us some tips and tricks?
Thank you so much. That is a very good question. So I think in teaching and learning, I think it is very important to have that good foundation and good relationship and communication and and how we should work together with parents, because a child sees their parents as the center of the universe, right? So it is very important to build that relationship between school and home. We need to be in the same pace, I would say, because if not, the children will be exposed to one thing, and then at home it's not very engaging, or you can't talk about certain things, for example. So I say building relationship with parents is very important. And this kind of goes back to the social justice education. Social justice education is not about just self-empowerment, but it is about community empowerment. It's about how that child can learn in school, but they can go home and they can teach their parents new skills. They can teach their parents, hey mom, today I learned this in school. This is really interesting. Can can we like talk about it a little bit? So these are the kind of skills that we want to teach our children in school. And again, having the parents on board, this is very important. So having a good relationship with parents, good communication with parents, it's all about relationship, and it's about community building. And that's, yeah. And also make sure to know, I think I mentioned this in my presentation, that it is very important to be responsive than reactive, because kids every day, they are exposed to different types of medias. And if they're not allowed to talk about it, or if the adults are not on board to talk about that, later in life, they can be reactive about it, instead of having the skills to actually articulate their thinking and to promote, to promote justice and equality. Instead of doing that, they're going to be reactive instead. So we want to have a classroom that set students for success instead of for failure. So that's my answer. I hope that's useful.
Okay, thank you. Another question is from Bu Endang Sulistiawati. I'd like to ask about how to deal with some utterance from a friend in Facebook, getting us to agree with him to like his idol, a political public figure, while in some way a civil servant cannot state his or her politics preference. How should we react to this?
Good question. Because as a civil person, people are actually watching what you're saying and thinking, right? Again, I think we need to be careful here, because in the context of Indonesia, it might be a little bit different than in the context of North America, where freedom of expression is encouraged. So in Indonesia, for example, if we say certain things, people might judge us a certain way. And I would say it can cause a lot of frictions, more so in Indonesia. Not to say that it doesn't happen in North America or in Canada, but more so in Indonesia, because there is that lots of elements that contradicts each other sometimes. So as adults, I guess if this is instead of kids, adults, okay, so instead of adults and adults, my personal opinion to you is to ignore. Is to learn how to ignore. And this is also something that I could practice, how to respond democratically and diplomatically. So how we can, so it's about how to talk like a politician, right? You're not attacking that person for having a different perspective, or because we are not agreeing with them. But instead, I think this is also an opportunity for us to learn to listen to others' perspective. So why is this person really like this idol? I want to learn about that. Let's do that. Let's learn that. What is something that I don't know that make me not like this person? So this is an opportunity. So in critical literacy, going back to this topic, it is not just about defending your own belief, right? But it's actually laying out every single thing that is available in the world. And we see everything at once, and then we make our judgment after, not before. So going back to critical literacy practice as an adult, okay? You can ignore first and relax and think about how to answer this diplomatically.
Yeah, so we learned something for adults.
Yeah.
Diplomatic. Okay. Now, and then another question is coming from Ibu Evelyn. How to encourage the students to be critical in thinking and integrate it into their writing if the students themselves have low level of writing skills? Any suggestions for that? Yeah, you know that she must be a teacher teaching English in the class, yeah, to the Indonesian students. So it seems that there is a hindrance to the students to use English.
Okay. Good. Very, very good questions. And in the past, I've encountered this type of students as well. So what I usually like to do to encourage students to be more critical or to be more creative is, first of all, as teachers, let's have conversation with that student. Ask your student what they like. Ask your students, like, what do you like to do outside of school? And ask them what they're so passionate about their life. For example, oh, I love to draw so much, for example. Okay, so we get to know our students a little bit. And from there, based on what they share, you can make lessons based on that. So this is kind of going back to the student fund of knowledge, right? So students come to our classroom. It doesn't mean that the student have zero knowledge and we need to fill in knowledge in the classroom. So it's actually not like that. Actually, kids come to the classroom, they already have this knowledge that they carry with them. It can be linguistically, it can be culturally, it can be all kind of knowledge that they have from home. So ask them about this. And because by you knowing this type of interest, learning becomes more interesting. So that is what I would do, the very first thing. Regarding the low writing skill and how to support students with this is that, so when I work with ESL students, when I work with newcomer students, they have some of them have zero English, and some of them speak a little English, or some of them can speak, but they cannot write. They're literally illiterate, for example. So as teachers, we should know what your students can do and cannot do. And you have to make accommodations or differentiations in their learning based on that. So what they're learning will be different. No, actually what they're learning will be the same, but the way to learn will be different maybe than the rest of the class. Because we cannot do the same thing, because if we do the same thing, these students that are falling behind, they will not learn. And we don't want that, right? So creating accommodations. So for example, if students are not comfortable in writing for whatever reasons, for example, not comfortable because of the spelling, not comfortable in writing paragraphs, for example, ask your student to talk about it first. Maybe your students want to record their voice while talking, and they can listen about that, and then they can write while listening to themselves. And what I have done in the past too is that I have asked my students to make drawings for me, to make a narrative. I would say it's a visual narrative about what they're going to write. So these are for ESL students that are not comfortable in writing usually. And so instead of having a blank document in Microsoft Word for them to type in, or having a blank piece of paper, write on their drawing, write directly on their drawing. So it is, so their drawings, their visual narrative support their writing, and their writing also support their visual narrative. So this is because as teachers, we don't want our students to fall behind and feeling I'm not good enough, and they feel discouraged and they just lose their interest in learning. So as teachers, we need to be very creative in how to accommodate these students.
Yeah, thank you, Christina.
You're welcome.
And there's also another question from Ibu Poppy. And Ibu Poppy is asking, how to encourage our teachers to listen by your heart, eyes, and ears. As a role model, teachers should be able to apply in the classroom in teaching learning process. And yeah, and Ipu Poppy is also happy with the idea mentioned that you see that this involves also the family members in doing the project.
Mm-hmm. So to the second comment, yes, I think involving family members, I think is very important, because it's kind of going back to what I said before, building that relationship with school and home. So yeah, to encourage, how to encourage teachers to listen with their heart, eyes, and ears. All right. As teachers, when we are, we have a big responsibility as teachers. These kids come to school and their parents trust us as teachers to educate them, to nurture them. So, but in the same time, we have to remember that as teachers, we are not just teachers. We are also learners in the same time. And we need to switch that perspective, that, you know, the idea that, oh, I am a teacher and therefore I have to stand in front of the classroom and I have to give you the knowledge that I have. We can no longer do that. That is, you know, going back to Freire's idea, that's sort of banking education, right? And we want to avoid that. Education has moved forward. So encourage teachers to listen with their heart, eyes, and ears. We have to come with the understanding that I'm coming to my classroom, not only as a teacher, but also as a learner. I am here to learn with my students. My students are my co-inquirers. We ask questions together. So what is interesting in the past, when I'm in the classroom, kids always ask most ridiculous questions sometimes, and it always comes out of the blue, and sometimes I don't know how to answer that question. And sometimes I've gone to, you know, several occasions where I'm just struck in the, you know, in the class, and I always tell my students, you know what, I will come back tomorrow with an answer, or let's talk about this right now. So kids always encourage us as teachers to also become learners. And it is always this interesting moments that you build with your students, right? And it's also like building relationship. So by having your hearts, eyes and ears open all the time, you're actually learning with your students. So it is, I think, the ideology of teaching, the mentality on how we should set our perspective when we step into our classroom. That's a really good question. I like that. Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Oh, we still have time, committee? Okay, now the next question is this one. In this pandemic situation, parents, like it or not, have to be teachers at home, in quote unquote, right? Very often parents are also getting stressed too. How can parents teach children to think critically? Not mentioning the education background of the parents.
Okay. I am not a parent, so I will try to be in the shoes of a parent, and I will try to answer this question in the shoes of a parent. I think this could be a good experiences that you can have between a parent and the children at home. They can maybe critically, in terms of the question, because the question is about how to critically understand, and the parents is stressed out because the parents is a parent, but also becoming a teacher now in the pandemic. So maybe what maybe, you know, what the parents can do is actually to have this type of activities where the children can actually analyze what the parents are doing, for example, during the day. What do my parents do? And they can write about it. What do they do to make a living for us? How many hours do my parents have to work to bring food to the table so that I'm not hungry, for example? So by having this sort of like criticality, that will open doors for students to actually understand the hardship of being a parent and a teacher in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the children can also learn from the daily activities done by the parents, yeah, so that they can be critical. Okay. Now the next question to Christina. Now, it seems that critical thinking is not assessed quantitatively, as teachers here, many teachers here like, and also parents like to see the numerical scores of their children, 80, 90, 75. Now, and actually how to assess the students' critical thinking appropriately so that the parents could also accept that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So quantitatively, I am a very qualitative person, I must say. So this is kind of going back to our obsession about standardized testing, right? So I know in Indonesia, to get to a certain schools, you have to have a certain grades. And in our society in Indonesia, you know, we unconsciously, we become super obsessed with numbers. However, I have also recognized that sometimes students that get a grade of 90 in a test or 95 in a test, after they leave that room, I don't know why, somehow that knowledge kind of walk away and they just don't remember what they even write in the test. So it is doing things for a grade, but not for skill. And we, in terms of critical literacy, yes, I mean, when we talk about assessment, there's that assessment of learning and assessment, assessment as learning and assessment of learning, right? So during the unit, during a very long unit like that, as what I presented to you, there's like about 12 activities. Each activity, students will actually produce work. And this type of work is usually, you can understand that child in such a deep level, in their thinking, in their criticality, understanding that child in the core of that child sometimes, especially when you write about this heavy type of writing. Okay. So what you can do is that when parents see this type of writing, this is an opportunity for parents to know their kids. And I think in Indonesia, there's also that parent-teacher conferencing, right? I assume there is parent-teacher conferencing where teachers come to school and they talk about where the students are at, and then they show the students' work, and then the teacher shows the different types of potentials that the student have, for example. So this is kind of going back actually to my childhood. So for example, when I was a kid, I was in a school that was super focused in math and sciences. Well, I am not that child. So I was falling behind. And in grades, if you assess me in grades, it's not so good. However, I think I'm privileged enough to have a parent that is an educator that could understand that grade is not everything. So for example, my mother know what I actually like to do, my interest, the things I like to draw. I like to make things with my hands. I like to create things. I love to make comics. I like to write storybooks. I wrote a novel, a short novel when I was 11 years old, for example. So these are the kind of things that teachers don't appreciate. These are the kind of things that people who are so obsessed with grades don't appreciate. And we don't want kids like me who have so much potential to fall behind in school. Because long time ago, I was not so appreciated. But I guess if my teachers probably see where I'm at right now and what I can do, maybe they could assess their teaching, their pedagogical practices on how to support students like me. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. And the last question here, yeah. There is a question from Bu Joyce, and concerning the activities that can be applicable for younger kids like kindergarten or grade 1 and grade 2. Mm-hmm. So how to apply this to younger students?
Okay.
That's the last question.
Yeah, so a social justice education and critical literacy, you can actually start this through, starting kindergarten. So this starts with the type of books that you have in your classroom. So make sure, I don't know how the setup of the classroom is in Indonesia, but in Canada, younger grades up to grade 6, I guess, we have a reading corner in our classroom. And in that reading corner, we have books, and that books are being changed so often, depending on the kids' interest. And these books are very current books. Although kindergarten kids cannot read yet, they can flip through these pictures. And sometimes I have noticed that my kids, not my kids, I mean my students in the past, when they were flipping through the pages, they do not read the words, but they tell the stories orally about the pictures. So this depends on us teachers on selecting what books should kids that age read appropriately. What kind of books can support my students' thinking? So that is very important. So that is one. The other thing, okay, I'm kind of going away a little bit on the virtual learning here, but the setup of the classroom is another very important thing. So in kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2, in some cases I also see grade 3 as well, is to have a classroom that allows students to somehow walk around. So when I was in Teachers College, one of the activity that we did is to actually, one of the assignment that I did was to actually only assessing the planning of the classroom, because the planning of the classroom is actually setting up a culture of that classroom. If we set up desk in rows and we have a desk at the front and we always sit at the front and the students always sit on their desk all the time, this doesn't create a very strong supportive culture of learning, community of learning. Instead, when students are being grouped by desk, for example, kindergarten kids, actually kindergarten kids now in Canada, we have play-based learning actually, but for grade 1 and 2, the arrangement of the classroom creates that culture. How do we allow the students to go from center to center? So for example, from the reading center to the math center, to the writing center, for example, to the science center, to the game center. So having that autonomy for students to move around, because when they move around, kids actually talk to each other and they are actually learning from each other. So these are for grade 1 and grade 2. For kindergarten kids, we usually set up centers, and kids usually can move whenever they want, centers to centers, and the type of activities that we put in that center. So centers are basically just a table and there's an activity set up for the kids there. So we as teachers, we need to think about what type of activities we should put on that table. So for example, there is one that my kids, this was kindergarten, and they were doing data management. So I have I don't have so for example, I have a board like this, and I would write on the board, say, draw a Barbie doll in one and draw a soccer ball. in the wand and draw a line, okay? And I usually have Sharpie and clip it on a board, and the students will walk around and ask their classmates, hey, what do you like? Do you like Barbie doll or do you like a soccer ball? And a boy might say a Barbie doll. So you tally. So tally is just giving one. So this is also a good opportunity for kids as young as 4.5, 5 years old to understand this type of, how to deconstruct gender norms, for example. And to understand about their friends as well. I also did a little bit of the activity to know where they are from. So the students that I've worked with, as I said, there are a large population is they're immigrants and refugee students in the school board. And they actually identify how many kids in my class speak English. How many kids in my class speak Amharic? How many kids in my class speak Arabic? And they create this beautiful poster based on their own analysis and based on their own work. And this is kindergarten. So we can do this as young as 4.5, I say.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tjandra. And that is the end of the question and answer sessions. And I give back the time to the committee, Jessica.
Okay. Thank you,
Again, thank you
for the wonderful insight, Ms. Tjandra. Now, hold on for a second, dear participants. There are prizes waiting for you. Now we'll move to quiz time. And the quiz will be guided by Ms. Dia Ratnawati.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Jessica. Thank you, Miss Jessica. Good day, everyone. I am Dia. Before we close this webinar, let's have a little game first. Let me share my screen. Give me a second. I need to confirm something. Miss Angela, can you see my screen from your computer? Okay. So today, we are giving away 200,000 rupiahs for 2 lucky winners. The prize will be sent to any digital wallets of your choice. The rules are very simple. First, I want you to open your browser. I repeat, from your computer, smartphone, or tab, please open your browser. It can be Google Chrome, Opera, Mozilla Firefox, Apple Safari, Microsoft Edge, or else. And please go to joinmyquiz.com and enter the game code 973567. I repeat, please go to joinmyquiz.com and enter the game code 973567 and type your full name. I'm waiting for about 30 seconds. Okay. So you need to answer each question accurately, and then our system will choose the winner. I'll start the game now. Okay, we have the winners here, and the winners are Tabita and Lina Handriani. Congratulations, and now we are back to Miss Jessica.
Thank you, Miss Diaratawati, and congratulations to the winners. All right, now we have ended the session and the quiz as well, and we really hope that today's webinar will be very beneficial for you, especially in your teaching and learning processes. Once again, we give our deepest gratitude to Ms. Tjandra and also to all of the participants for joining us from the beginning of the session until the end of the session. Now let's close this webinar with a closing prayer. I'd like to invite Ms. Clementine Kordisaran Priyabodo to lead the prayer. Ms. Priyabodo, time is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Rebina. Can you hear my voice now? Dear ladies and gentlemen, we are almost at the end of the workshop, but before that, let us pray together and thank God for all we have accomplished today. And here I will lead the prayer in Catholic Greek. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your presence from the start to the end of this workshop. Let us put our knowledge we have got into action and be the light for others. Oh Lord, may the things discussed today bear fruit in our lives and in other people. In Jesus' name we believe and pray. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you for the prayer. Now I'd like to give it back to Pak Hendra as the last closing.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. So, well, audience, we come to the end of this webinar today. And yeah, do not forget that you have to fill out the questionnaires provided by the committee if you want to get your certificate. Again, we thank you very much to Christina Tjandra for your inspiring ideas and also experiences concerning critical literacy for Indonesian school children who are in house. So hopefully that teachers in Indonesia can also learn something from you. And yeah, you see that you've been here with us for 1.5 hours. Well, by the time it is 11 in Canada, it is time for you to go to bed, to sleep.
Soon. Not quite. Soon.
Okay. So again, thank you, Bu Christina, and good night from all of us here in Indonesia. And good night, Canada.
Yes. Enjoy for the rest of your day, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you
And
again.
we also thank you, dear participants, and see you in our next webinar. Goodbye. Have also a nice weekend since it's Saturday. Bye-bye, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Hendra. And dear participants, here is the link of the questionnaire as what we have explained in the rules and regulations. We expect all of the participants to fill in the questionnaire to claim the e-certificate. So please make sure that you have already filled in the questionnaire before 4 p.m. today, because the questionnaire will be closed on 4 p.m. at 4 p.m. And the e-certificate will be sent to your email at the latest 2 days after this webinar. So that will be on Monday. Yeah, if you have any other question related to the e-certificate and also the materials of the webinar, you can always ask us through the contact person. Thank you and God bless you.